Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Solo Collective podcast. My name's Matt Saunders, and I'm your host. For those who don't know me, I am a coach to freelancers and creative agency owners. I spent the best part of 20 years as a website developer, and then I trained as a coach. And now my role is to help other people in our creative industry to level up their mindset, improve their business processes, and find more joy in their work. And in this episode, I'm really going to dig into that last point about finding joy in your work, because this is something that is so sad and I see it all the time. And I was there myself many years ago. Creative people working with clients that they don't really like, working on projects that bore them. Now, you didn't go into business for these reasons. You went into business to take control of your life. You want to control the people that you work with, the projects that you work on, and the money that you earn. And yet so many of us are out there having all of those things dictated to us. And so in this episode, I'm going to share with you a two-step process to help you figure out what it is that you actually want and then get out of your own way so that you can go and get it. Okay, so before I go any further, I just want to say that I've been coaching for 3 years now, and I've coached people one-on-one. I've been coached one-on-one. I've been in group programs, and I've also run group programs. And I also now run a membership called the Solo Collective, and you can check that out at mattsaunders.uk/membership. And I would say that the biggest insight that I've gained into the human mind, into the human psyche, is that there appears to be two versions of us operating at any one time. Now, I'm going to call the first version the inner self and the second version the outer self. And I would say that the inner self is the one that really knows what's going on. It's really tapped in and it knows what it wants. This would be the real you, your natural state. This is the you that is you. This is the you that feels safe to express itself and is uninhibited and feels complete. But the other self that I'm talking about, the outer self, is more concerned with how it is perceived by the outside world. You might refer to this as the ego. And the ego is really, really interested in self-preservation. It feels exposed. And so it tends to listen to the opinions of other people and give them so much weight and try and conform to the expectations of others. Now, you can probably see where I'm going with this. This episode is called The Secret to Getting What You Want. So what we want to do is tune down the voice of the outer self and bring up the volume of the inner self. So the first of the two steps to actually start doing this is to get into tune with what you really want. Remember, the inner self is the deeper voice. It's the real you that is hiding behind the exterior. It's hiding behind this ego that you've created for yourself for how you want to show up in the world. The outer self is the one that conforms and does what it's told and tries to blend in and all this kind of stuff. And that's how we end up with bad fit clients and rubbish projects. It's the fearful state that so many of us are in because we're not in tune with our inner self. So this first step, we want to tune into what we really want. And there are two ways to do that. One thing that's really helped me in the past is very, very simple: meditation. Now, meditation is obviously in vogue these days. There are so many apps and websites that you can use to do guided meditations. And the good news is you actually don't need any of that stuff. And you don't need a lot of time either. Literally 5 or 10 minutes is all it takes. And the point of meditation for me when it comes to figuring out the things that you want is to quieten the mind so that you can actually listen to the inner voice. Now, a way to think about this is when you are tense, it's very difficult to know what's really going on. If you think about a clenched fist, nothing can get into a clenched fist. But when you meditate, you relax. And when we relax, that's when we can get into this more receptive mindset, this state of new ideas and inspiration that otherwise couldn't get in. So that's the first way to actually determine what it is that you want, is to stop the thinking process and to stop being so wrapped up in trying to have all the answers. It is to relax the body, relax the mind, and then observe whatever comes to you. Doing this will enable the inner voice to come to the surface. And that inner voice has wisdom. It knows. So pay attention to it. Another thing you could do is free writing. So that is to give yourself a prompt question and then set a timer and just begin writing whatever comes to mind. So a couple of ones that you could use, for example, are what makes you feel totally alive? Or how would it feel to bring an amazing idea into reality? What would be the highest expression of yourself? These are open-ended questions. And the challenge here is to not start thinking about how you would achieve things. This isn't a goal setting exercise. This is a reflective exercise to get the juices flowing and to open up the mind. So yeah, what would make you feel totally alive? Set a timer and then just start free writing this stuff down. You could do it in the form of sentences, paragraphs. You could even doodle pictures if you want. You could use a mind mapping tool, whatever makes sense to you to capture this inspiration. And if you really want to double down on this, you could have a small meditation session and then move into the free writing exercise. You're only looking at about 15 minutes of your time. But if you practice this on a regular basis, it's going to help you tap into and keep tuned into that inner voice, which knows, remember, what you really, really want. And it's going to help to turn down that outer voice that is out there in the world trying to impress people and taking you into all kinds of directions that you don't want to go. So just to recap, the first step is to tune into what you really want by turning up the inner voice and turning down the outer voice. And you can do this through meditation and free writing. The next step is actually where the challenge really comes in, and that is about allowing it to happen. Now, when I say allow it to happen, I'm intentionally using the word allow. Conventional wisdom always tells us that to hit our goals and to strive for bigger and better things, we have to make it happen. But I'm not such a big believer in making things happen as I am allowing things to happen. Now, go back to what I said a moment ago. Your inner voice knows what it wants. Your inner self knows what it wants. It's the outer self that then gets in the way. The inner voice says, oh, I'm going to go do some public speaking because that's going to be inspirational and it's going to move my career forward and it's going to be great. And the outer voice says, whoa, hang on a minute. Don't do that. Don't do that. You might be judged. You might make a fool of yourself. People are going to think you're stupid. And then your whole career is going to go down the toilet. So this isn't something to push through. Often we talk about breaking through and making things happen. But all we want to really do here is just tune out that negative outer self voice that's telling us we can't do something and just tune into the inspiration that we're feeling for what we want to do inside. That is to allow it to happen. Remember, the outer self is interested in self-preservation and it is fearful of change and things that are different. The inner self has no concept of this. The inner self is just this inspired being that wants to experience the world. And so that's the one we want to listen to, right? And so how do we actually do this? What's the practical tip that I can give you to help you to tune into that inner voice, that inner self? Well, the main thing is to simply pay attention to it as often as possible. So to do that, you first have to notice when your outer self is running the show. Are you being reactive? Are you reacting with anger and frustration? Are you not thinking things through properly? Or are you overthinking things? Are you procrastinating? Awareness is so important when it comes to the personal development conversation. And business is basically just an exercise in personal development. Your outer self is typically guiding you through fear, whereas your inner self is typically guiding you through inspiration. And so on a daily basis, we want to be thinking thoughts that are positive. We want to be thinking thoughts that are in alignment with what we actually want, what that inner self is telling us. At the same time, we want to become aware of the negative thoughts that our outer self is telling us. And then it really is a case of just choosing to listen to the positive, helpful thoughts that are actually going to move us in the direction that we want to go in, rather than the self-preservation, fearful thoughts that are trying to keep us where we are. So this has been a bit of a spiritual episode, but I hope it's one that you have found helpful. I'm a big believer that too many of us are walking around in the world without really knowing what's going on. And when I say not knowing what's going on, I mean within ourselves. So I'm not a religious person, but I am spiritual. I do believe that the actions that we take like they come from within. And as I've outlined in this episode, we can actually cultivate what is going on within by choosing our thoughts, by paying attention to our feelings, and by consciously taking action in the world. So yeah, back yourself, take actions that are in alignment with what you really want. Make a practice of meditating and free writing and bringing awareness to what it is that you want, and then follow those feelings. And if you do this every day, your life will change. I promise you, your life will change for the better. So I hope that was helpful, and I hope that you're going to come away from this episode feeling energized and inspired, because that's what it's all about. If you've got any questions or you'd like to talk to me about this, you can reach me at mattsaunders.uk, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn. And in any case, if you've made it this far, do hit subscribe, and I will see you in the next episode.